But honestly, I don't think any of us really had a solid idea of how bad this thing is until the debate just a few nights ago between John Fetterman and Mehmet. So welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for the support. On my channel, I like to give my opinion and perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us who are trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. We are not CEOs of big corporations, we're not part of the mainstream media, and we do not live in the Hollywood bubble. We are also not politicians in Washington, D.C., but we do have to live with the consequences of the decisions being made and the narrative being pushed by the people in the previously mentioned categories. If you feel like that describes you and you know exactly what I'm talking about, please be sure to like this video, leave a comment below, and also share it. Also, be sure to subscribe. All of these things help me to grow my channel and hopefully to reach more people that value logic, reason, and sanity. Also, be sure to find me on Rumble under Outspoken Samantha in the event that YouTube decides I have violated their community standards and chooses to kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. So I really do think that we need to talk about John Fetterman, and not just his issues, but kind of the broader spectrum of issues and just really kind of what it highlights about how people feel about politics in general, and just kind of how it's been almost demoted into this thing that really it's not taken as seriously as it should be, that it really is something that, we can just kind of do whatever we want with it, that it doesn't really matter who our elected representatives are, that doesn't really matter who are in leadership positions, that we can really just kind of put anybody in there, and it really doesn't matter a whole lot, which is really, really concerning. Honestly, it probably wasn't until about maybe a month or so ago that I even knew who John Fetterman was. Like, I knew who Dr. Oz was. I knew he was running for governor of Pennsylvania. I'd heard of John Fetterman. But ultimately, not my state, didn't really pay that much attention to it. It wasn't until this issue of his stroke came up. And of course, it really started to get more attention because, rightfully so, people were questioning his cognitive abilities, whether or not he was actually going to recover, whether he was fit to do this job. And when it was starting to become more obvious that this stroke really had a very severe impact on his mental abilities, on his processing abilities, on his ability to even speak, it honestly started to feel a little bit icky to even give ratings, to give viewership to the clips that were being shared, because I didn't want to contribute to the exploitation of this person, and the fact that the leftist party that he represents didn't really seem to care a whole lot that this person is clearly struggling. But honestly, I don't think any of us really had a solid idea of how bad this thing is until the debate just a few nights ago between John Fetterman and Mehmet, if that's how you say his name. I don't think that any of us, I think we all knew it was bad, but I don't think we realized it was that bad. And if you've seen any of the clips, you could tell it was like he was fighting with his own brain to get the words out, to try to make sense, let alone even get full sentences out. I admit there was one thing that I kind of chuckled at, and it was this little clip.
As lieutenant governor, you're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm running to serve Pennsylvania. He's running to use Pennsylvania.
I know it's not funny, and I'm not even sure that I laughed because I thought it was funny. I think it was so unexpected because somebody posted it online, and I saw, the thing that he said, and I was like, no. And I clicked on it, and I burst out laughing because it was just so out of the blue, so unexpected, and it honestly sounded like an SNL skit to me. But I think part of me laughing was just the fact that I was so completely just astounded that this is a legitimate candidate for the position of governor over, to oversee an entire state of millions of people. But it was the other clips that got even more painful to watch, that really, like, there was no humor in it whatsoever. It was just sad. Like when he was asked about his just blatant contradictory statements about his position on fracking, like this.
I must correct the record.
Just a second, Mr. Oz. I do want to clarify something. You're saying tonight that you support fracking, that you've always supported fracking, but there is that 2018 interview that you said, quote, I don't support fracking at all. So how do you square the two?
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand and I do support fracking.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman.
I'm sorry, Lisa, but this.
So, and of course, the left is responding as expected. Everything is political with the left, and everything needs a label. There couldn't possibly be any reason for you to not want to vote for somebody who is clearly dealing with a very severe medical condition that affects their cognitive ability. The only reason that you would vote against them is because you're an ableist, or of course you're hateful and discriminatory, or probably racist as well. And I don't understand how it's hateful or discriminatory to point out the fact that someone may or may not be fit for a particular position, especially one that is very stressful, one that requires a lot of meetings, one that requires a lot of public appearances and a lot of decision making, and one that requires very clear and concise communication. But of course, the only reason the left can think of as to why someone would be opposed to John Fetterman being elected as governor in the state that he's in is simply because he's a Democrat. If he were a Republican, of course, we wouldn't be opposed to it, and we're just using his medical condition to keep him from being elected. That we would just be, we'd feel completely different about it if it was our candidate that was struggling, which is really honestly stupid, and it's pure insanity, because I did have the thought, honestly, I sat down and thought about this. If it were a Republican candidate, would I still vote for this person over putting another leftist in office? And the conclusion I came to was the fact that we wouldn't put somebody in this position. We would not put somebody in this position that cannot communicate, that is struggling cognitively, that is going through this very severe mental impairment in this position. We wouldn't do it because honestly, we still take the position of public office seriously. Being a representative or a leader of your city, of your state, of your country, it's not a joke, and it's not to be taken lightly. You should want somebody in office that can clearly communicate with you and that you can clearly communicate with. Like, that's not a particularly high bar to reach, especially now. Our country is seeing the highest inflation rates in decades. Gas prices are hurting people. We are in a recession. The housing market is about to crash. Our kids are still trying to catch up from being shut out of schools for almost 2 years and being used as political pawns. We have an invasion happening at the southern border. There's a fentanyl crisis in every city in America. Crime is surging and people don't feel safe even going outside. And we certainly don't have national security. And you want to put somebody in office that can't even string an entire sentence together and can barely understand the questions that they are being asked. This has nothing to do with discriminating against stroke victims or using his condition to gain political points for the other side. The left are the ones that continue to parade this man across the public stage, knowing full well that he's not doing well. And they didn't care when he had this stroke, and they don't care now. The left has reduced political office to an absolute joke. The current president of the United States is falling asleep during interviews. He has no idea that he's president half the time, and he calls his vice president the president. the other half of the time. He yells about the economy being strong as hell while mumbling through mouthfuls of ice cream. He gets lost on his own lawn and consistently waits to be told who he can and cannot interact with. Our VP constantly talks to the public like we're all a bunch of 4-year-olds, and then laughs when she's asked a serious question about some of the issues that are happening in the country. Not to mention this bizarre crew of men dressed up as women that the White House seems to be consistently inviting onto the premises and into the public eye. Again, there's no way that the right would even put on this kind of charade, because we actually take these positions in government seriously. It's about whether or not you can do the job, while the left just wants to fill positions of power with people that look like certain groups of people. Like they want to put a trans person in the office to get more trans visibility, or black people to get more black representation, or we need to hire more women to meet more women quotas. And now apparently with John Fetterman, according to MSNBC, they want more representation of disabled people in an elected position. And by the way, like 5 minutes ago, these guys were saying that it was just an auditory processing issue, and now they've just gone ahead and labeled this man just full on as disabled. So their words, not mine. But these stupid labels are what are destroying the most respected government in the entire world. And of course, the people that point it out, we just get called names, instead of recognizing that the left has turned our government into an absolute farce by promoting people who look a certain way or meet a certain, specific superficial criteria without any concern as to whether or not they're qualified to do the job. If John Fetterman were your boss at work, would you respect him? Would you listen to him? Would you feel comfortable working under someone that you couldn't even communicate with? Because I guarantee that there's no one that would put up with that work situation. And I'm pretty sure most of us would say, dude, you got to face reality. Like, you're not able to do this effectively anymore. If a basketball player were to break his leg, would we just put them back on the court to make them feel better and just say, sorry, teammates, screw you. Like, we have to make sure we don't hurt this person's feelings. Like, you guys just kind of have to put up with it. Or if, an airline pilot lost his sight, we would just say, oh, well, we have to put him back in the cockpit to make him feel better so he doesn't feel bad about the things that have happened to him. And you're not allowed to accuse him of endangering people's lives, because if you do, that just makes you hateful and discriminatory. What other scenario would this make any sense whatsoever? And honestly, if you want, you can't really accuse the right of being ableist or discriminatory, because if we need to point this out, and I really hate that I have to point this out, the governor of Texas is in a wheelchair, and Texas voted for him, and it's not because it's not about whether or not he's disabled, it's whether or not his condition affects his ability to do the job. And you can do your job and not be able to walk, but you can't do this kind of job without being able to think or to speak. That's a whole other issue. So this is not a partisan standard, and elected positions are not there to make somebody else feel better. And the left seems to want to elect John Fetterman just so he doesn't feel bad about having a stroke. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you're not feeling well. Like, would being governor make you feel better? Like, let's do that. If it would make you feel that much better to hold the highest position in the state, then you can have it. And anyone who doesn't want you to have it is just mean and just doesn't want you to feel better. Like, that's the message that it sounds like. And that's honestly kind of how the left operates anyway. It's like, oh, you're having a hard time, so let's just give you whatever you want and anything that you ask for. Honestly, all kidding aside, like, people deserve to have representatives that are effective, that are of sound mind, that can communicate ideas clearly, that can understand ideas clearly. It takes a lot to run a state, to run a city, to run a country. And if you take it so lightly and can dismiss it so easily as to say, we can put anybody that we want in this position, we want to consider these other factors that have absolutely nothing to do with the position, like what color their skin is or what kind of minority group they represent, over their actual qualifications, that's when people suffer. That's when the state suffers. That's when their constituent suffers. When they have somebody that really is put into a position that they are not prepared to perform effectively. And people deserve representatives that are able to listen to them and to take their ideas and to take their desires and their wants and to, listen to their struggles and to solve problems and to make decisions. And John Fetterman is not in a position to do that. That's all I had to say about that. Leave a comment below. Please like and share and subscribe and help me to grow this channel. And I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you so much for being here. Clearly it's late. It's time for this girl to go to bed. Talk to you later.